So to start, and just keep things a little bit simple, it'd be great if each of you could just kind of run through biggest successes you've seen so far in generating international revenue outside of a core market like the US. And equally, what you think the biggest challenges for 2015 in kind of continuing to grow that revenue outside of core markets, someone looking across Europe, Southeast Asia, and other emerging markets that are coming through. Who wants to take that first? Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. We can see that the market is growing in so many different markets. I mean, outside the US and Europe, so China and India as well. Sometimes is like underestimated, but it's a big market. So I guess it's really important to look outside just the big players, like the big countries, the US and Europe, UK, and look around, because there's a lot of potential. There are opportunities to increase the revenue by just literally looking around and so on. So 2015 definitely it should be. I mean, we saw this morning with Sam from Penny how like some countries are like expanding so much. So it's definitely something that we should look into to keep the revenue growing during the year and the next few years.
Yeah. Nice.
So on our end, one of the two big successes for 2014 was the development of partnership with sales houses in some geos, especially in Southeast Asia. So we have partnered with sales houses in those geos that are connected to all the trading desk or all the agencies over there, and that are very familiar with what they do in this kind of market, like what kind of ad format they do, what kind of creative they want, and what kind of campaigns they run. So that's one of our very good success for 2014, where we have expanded this kind of partnership on the very direct side. On a more programmatic side, we have launched our own private video exchange that is now live, that has been live for the last few weeks. So for this, we have been able to we are now able to be connected to way more demand sources like DSPs and networks and so on. So we have seen this last few weeks a huge increase of demands all over the world. So basically, we have no more technical restriction to address all the kind of different demand partners in the world, thanks to this ad exchange, and we have way more granularity to address their need, depending the different countries and their different needs. So yeah, that's basically the two.
What are the key differences you're seeing between kind of the revenue generated and the ad types you see in the US versus Asia? I know you just mentioned the Asian markets, and you're putting a lot of stuff in with sales houses in place and exchanges and so on. What's the toughest challenge for you there?
So the toughest challenge is on the video side is to connect with directly the local programmatic partner in the geos where, like in Asia, for instance, or in Middle East or in Eastern Europe, where the generally like the global partner are less implanted. So we need to go there and find local partners that are maybe only in Russia or maybe in Korea and in Japan. So that is one of the challenge. And I would say for the different format, the challenge is more on the display end, especially on mobile actually, because for instance, in the Nordic, they are really willing to do more banners and interstitial and things like this, and we need to take this into account. And especially because also our own inventory and our own audience is very different from a country to another. So in our for instance, in France, so we are a French company, at the beginning at least, and we have a very strong partnership with content partner in France, and we are a very well-known brand. So we have a lot of apps, a lot of users have downloaded our apps, and our traffic is Most of it comes from the apps. When in the US or in Southeast Asia, our traffic comes more from mobile web, very predominantly from mobile web. So we have to address these different needs and to find a way to deliver impression on different ecosystem.
And Wilson, for you, I suppose OMG Pop kind of speaks for itself in your previous role from revenue success and so on. With regard to PicsArt, obviously you've come on board looking to take it to the next level. What success have they seen so far, and where do you see the challenge in taking it to that next stage?
Yeah, PicsArt's originally a European company as well. It's self-funded. It's actually profitable just really through advertising with the team of 80. I think, money's a bit like the cookie. It crumbles in a certain direction. So when you're at the top of the food chain, you're always better off no matter what. Yeah. And that's just globally. So if you're very large and you've got a big brand, your access to brand dollars, your access to repping firms, and ultimately, the crop of the types of campaigns and the CPM range you're going to get is always going to give you a competitive advantage. And I think, when you combine that with, as you mentioned, just trying to address the cultural or more regional approach to execution, those two are really ultimately what makes a difference in maximizing your overall inventory. We have about 30% of our users in US English speaking and 25% in Asia, 20% in Europe. Most very large scale app have 60% plus of their users are international. So the long tail, if you want to call it outside of the US, can be significant. And it's kind of the same grind. I mean, you got to find the right repping firms. You got to have the right type of inventory to fulfill the type of demand that is met there. Video is not big in China yet. There's more and more CPM in China, actually. Over the past couple of years, they've gone really from performance-based environment to a much more, at least, brand-focused environment. And there's more and more, especially in Japan as well, companies that are focused on high-flying or high-profile applications. I think also, depending on the type of application you are, obviously, video and images and social have really taken off globally, and communication. So if you happen to be one of those, that are in top 3 or, in size and scale, people are knocking down at your door. I think it comes down to then what's your offering capability and how do you deliver an experience to your users as you're trying to generate revenues that balances milking the cow and creating value.
So you mentioned number of markets, obviously, EMEA, and you said emerging markets and so on. For next year then, what do you see as the kind of next wave of revenue opportunity internationally coming through? Obviously, you mentioned China. Southeast Asia is starting to really pick up from a revenue perspective. Where do you see that kind of next wave coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I think I look at it as, I think Asia is going to continue to really, really grow rapidly on a dollar standpoint. And then it's really about the ad type, the ad inventory type. I think there's really a huge influence in what type of media you're running, whether or not you're running rich media or video. Video obviously has grown drastically here, but I would say there's a lot of regions of the world that haven't gotten that supply yet, whether it's Latin America or even in Europe. I think the biggest challenge in Europe is unlike if you're just dealing with China or even Japan, which is theoretically significantly smaller than Europe holistically, but it's such a dense mobile-focused market, and the usage rates over there are so significant, as well as in Korea, that when those markets start taking off, the access on a percentage basis to the overall population is huge. When you deal with France or you deal with the UK, you're really dealing with separate markets, as well as Germany and Spain, and so I don't think the hierarchy of Europe has really changed that much between, it goes from UK to France, Germany, Italy, Spain. The Nordics have come on strong because I think of the huge booming the booming gaming over there. But I think from our perspective, the media types we're bringing into the product, as well as the relationships we're setting up to maximize those, is going to be the key.
Yeah. Great. Actually, you mentioned France, you mentioned Germany as well. Probably a question for you two, Simon and Andrea, as well. If you look at France, for instance, obviously you're based in Paris. A lot of brand businesses only really spending on video, interstitial, not so much on banners. And then if you look at somewhere like Germany, it's very local brand focused. If you don't have a local German brand, you don't seem to pull in as much brand revenue. How are you guys managing that? Are you doing separate releases in different markets with different ad formats to try and cater for that, or are you using kind of technical tools to kind of drive in that demand?
So on the video end, we still have the same format. It's still pre-rolls or interactive pre-rolls on mobile, on tablet, and on desktop as well. So we don't customize on the formats. For mobile, for display and on mobile, we customize. We try to customize as much as we can, depending on the different geos. So it's a bit complicated because it's not as scalable as we want, as we would like. But we try to. Especially for high-impact formats, to be as close to our demand partner needs as we can, definitely.
Sure.
I mean, I think one of the things that's probably underrated because it takes a lot of work is sponsorships.
Yeah.
I think, and there's the kind of middle ground between native and sponsorships, but users actually like to interact with brands that are contextually relevant, that are socially relevant, that are seasonally relevant. And whether or not there's reward behind that. I mean, if you deliver on fully immersive, integrated, interactive touch points and with those brands in your product, matching verticals of content with with seasonality and upcoming movies, with celebrities, et cetera, like on the video side or the content side or the image side, that goes a long way. I mean, they're very, very good at doing that in Asia and communication apps of having bots with celebrities, Katy Perry on that stuff, and at the end of the day, I mean, you've got to make a living and you've got to support your staff and you got to grow, but if you get a little bit creative around what you can do, and we were very lucky to have a tremendous amount of experience there at OMG Pop with Draw Something, you could deliver a tremendous level of experience and engagement for your users around sponsors. And around contextually brand engagement, and we worked really closely at that time with Millennial Media, who was kind enough to rep us in many different ways with many different clients. But you can generate millions and millions of dollars with, I would say, proper integration. And that what it takes is just working with your product team. It's understanding what the market bears, working with your agencies and your sales market, and trying to understand how they're buying. The combination of ad impressions to custom touch points. And bundling for the planner as well as the creative guy. And on your user side, it's working with your product guys and seeing where are the touch points that bring brands relevancy into a product, where that engagement, that interaction is going to create value for everybody involved. And because of all the analytics and the tracking capabilities day and age, you're not just measuring banner impressions. You can actually measure engagement with the brand if they're taking any format of action. And so even though you don't want to promise any of those particular metrics, you can actually create a really nice value proposition to an agency or to a brand that will have CPM rates that are unmatched from even an interstitial video, and actually will have a huge viral social impact on Twitter or Facebook and sharing and comments. And so you've got the entire value chain of, you've got your media ad buy, you've got your contextual integration, and then you've got your social proliferation of the campaign because users actually really enjoyed it.
Sure. Great. So actually, quick question for you then, Andrea. Just talking on challenges that we've probably all had over the last few years internationally. iOS 7 caused a bit of an issue for you, especially with the release of their flashlight app.
Yeah.
I know you saw a bit of a drop in users and so on. How did you kind of manage that? Because obviously you were driving pretty strong revenues globally.
Yeah.
How much impact did international have in kind of keeping that sustained, and what did you do as a business to try and contain that and keep international revenue growth?
One of the most successful apps that we've got is this flashlight. And last year I was in San Francisco at the WWDC, and when I saw iOS 7 coming out and saw that small icon in the corner, I started to hate Tim Cook for the first time ever. And so after a very long night with a lot of drinks and difficult night, I came back and I thought, okay, I'm a developer. I need to understand what I can do to compensate a little bit of course, the drop that I was facing. So basically, I started to analyze the data that I got from the different networks, and I realized that not all the networks perform well everywhere. I mean, it's a global market, so it's fair that there are ad networks that are stronger in US, others that are stronger in UK, others that are stronger, I don't know, in Asia. And my app usage was like, the time frame was really, really small, like 1 or 2 minutes on average. So in this particular case, for me, it was so important to optimize the first call, to make it sure that the first call went to the network with the highest CPM for my traffic. So I basically built this layer. Of course, I was mediating across different networks, but I basically added a layer on top of it that basically prioritizes the traffic on a country-by-country basis. So instead of relying only on the average CPM that you get from a network, I'm actually optimizing the traffic on a country-by-country basis. And you will be surprised of the difference that it makes in revenue. Because, yeah, it allows you, of course, to get basically the first call to the best network and shift the traffic dynamically. So that way I was able to compensate quite a bit the drop in usage. And the other thing that I discovered is that users, once that they get used to use one app, especially if it's a utility app, they stick to it. It's like, I definitely had a drop, like a huge drop in users, but after the initial drop, it kind of stabilized, and it kept going like quite stable since then. So
the country mediation made a massive difference for you, right?
Yeah.
Just keep that increase.
Yeah.
Great. And Simon, we were talking about Asian markets earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So you're based in Paris, probably one of your smallest markets, and on top of that, what 95% of your mobile inventory is mobile web.
Yeah.
Which is great. What challenges does that present? And also, especially with kind of video demand coming in, we've heard a lot of people talk about it today, as in video is growing. It's huge in the US right now. We're seeing it pick up in markets like Japan and Europe and so on. Do you face any challenges with just being mobile web-based, especially as a lot of brand revenue is buying interstitial video, limitations in technology and being able to get that served on mobile web?
So for the display part, yes. So it's a lot of demand is sent to app and to application, and so we need really to educate the market to go to also to mobile web as well. In some deals in Asia, the market is already aware and developed for the mobile web, so it is okay for us. But we definitely need to move this way as well. Regarding the pre-rolls on mobile, it's also, and mobile and tablets, it's also something that we are trying to develop in Southeast Asia. Now we have our own private video exchange. We are, so a lot of new buyers can access our inventory. So now we have not like we have done the technical work. We really need to do the business work and to identify those partners and to so those buyers, those trading desks, or those DSPs, or those networks that need our inventory in these Southeast Asian countries or Japan and Korea, and develop direct deal with them, like direct programmatic deal with them on a yearly basis, on a campaign basis, etc., etc. So that's the core focus.
Perfect. And for you, Wilson, I know obviously a bit of a gap between ONG Pop and doing what you're doing now. When you first started out trying to go around revenues there, I know a lot's changed. How much easier is it for you now coming into another business, or is it easier coming into a new business trying to grow those ad revenues as it was, 3-4 years ago?
I actually think
is it easier?
No different.
No, really?
It's like a startup. You could do 5 of them, sell 5 companies. It's the same amount of pain the next time around.
Yeah.
It's a grind. I mean, I think that you cannot underestimate the granularity, the operational, technical, kind of entire value chain that you have to really narrow, pinpoint down in accuracy and doing well across whatever it is that you're going to try to do, whether it's a banner or a video or interstitial RTB. The importance of working with the partners. I mean, I'm kind of famously known for being a very hands-on, demanding partner. But if you give back in that process, so how much information you give to your partners, so that when you evaluate whether it's a banner or a native ad or a potential opportunity, ensuring that you're getting information that allows you to make smart, educated decisions, having your engineering team involved, your product team, understanding the resource requirement, and it's that formula that ultimately allows you to be successful. And I don't think that's changed. I don't think the principle in which you go about trying to deliver value to users, to brands, and to your product has changed. I think you've got more tools. I think there's more ways of going about doing that more efficiently. I think the biggest challenge remains, I would say, tracking and reporting. But and there's more fun ad formats certainly to play around with. Yeah. And in our environment, the context of native becomes very important because we are an image-based environment, we're a social environment. So I'm getting to do things with new formats of ads that we didn't have in the past, and that's great because of our platform type. Mm-hmm. But the execution actually hasn't changed at all. And how you work with partners and diligencies around the execution, whether it's global or US, it's the same mechanics, and it requires the same type of internal talent in terms of ad operations and execution. We're super lucky at OMG Pop to have Liz Perlman, who's now at EA, grinding that out with me. Yeah. And growing that environment. But you learn as much from the failures of the types of media types that won't work, the calls that didn't go through, updates of SDKs recently with Immobie and iOS 8 that fucked up half of the market. And you learn, and you're constantly learning from that process. And I think the only truth is you're constantly learning. And you're learning about how to readjust to the new ad formats, to the new opportunities, and to ultimately understanding your funnel and what your opportunities are financially. But the formula is the same.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I'm getting the couple of minutes signal. So just before I ask my final questions to each of you, has anyone got any questions? International revenue streams? Anyone having any challenges they wanted to get answers on? One over here.
When are you going to start selling that mediation layer?
Sorry?
When are you going to start selling that mediation layer that you
No, at the moment it is like for personal use. I mean, for I'm not allowed to say more than that. No, it's a custom-made thing, so it would take quite a little bit of effort to make it available to the public. I don't really know. It might be something that I might look into, but at the moment is basically custom, completely custom. But yeah, it's working well.
Cool. Any more questions? Okay, final question for you guys. One piece of advice to everyone in the room from each of you on the one thing that you would say to help them grow global revenue outside of the US market. What would it be?
Establish and develop partner relations by asking other people in the industry who are the best partners out there. I mean, I've built most of the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in ad revenues at my past companies by just nonstop interactions with my ad network and partners, and understanding who's the best mediation out there, who's got the best RTB out there. When I'm talking to Facebook, I'm like, well, who do you like most when it comes to mediation? Talking million. The information is all out there, and you only know so much. You only know what you know, and so the key, I think, is ultimately getting to know a lot more. And when it comes to the international markets, you've got to work with local players. To work with local players, you've got to ask partners, competitors, industry insiders, who's best in class and why. And you've got to be aggressive about that. You've got to, really, it doesn't matter if they're a competitor. You just got to get to the right information so you can make the smartest decision. Yeah. Avoid, the most amount of work for your teams and deliver the highest value. But I think it's asking people around, asking people, in other markets where you have no insider track or actual information.
What do we need to do? Simple.
Yeah. I mean, it's a simple process.
Yeah, for me, it would be kind of the same of advice. It would be to get the closest as possible to the advertisers and to the trading desks, and to understand how they want to buy your inventory, what kind of DSP or what kind of networks they usually use for this, because the ecosystem is still very fragmented, And the way a huge advertiser works in Western Europe will be very different from a way a huge advertiser will work in Southeast Asia. And so it can still rely on a network or on a DSP or have different process for mobile and tablet and desktop. And that's really something that we need to get a better understanding to deliver the needs, and then to,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the basic principle is don't build shit people don't want to buy. So figure out what people are actually buying into, and there's so many best practices out there, and there's so many leading applications, whether it's ESPN or Twitter or whoever it is, Facebook, who are getting the dollars. So, and the agencies. I mean, you can't get money without understanding how planners and agencies function. So, yeah, I mean, deliver on value that people want to buy into is the way to go.
Andrea, 30 seconds.
Well, I guess they already said pretty much everything. Definitely, especially if you are a small developer, just look at the different markets, try to understand them a little bit better, and look to find partners, someone that can help you understand a little bit better the different markets. There are markets that are really hard to to understand, to get into. So definitely find someone that can help you better monetize, better understand the traffic, the kind of users, and so on. So yeah.
Great. Well, thanks guys. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.